Interfaith Paths to Peace, and this is our Thursday 3 o'clock program, which is called LouLab. And during this time, we have a variety of different conversations around important issues that are arising in Louisville, and we use it as an opportunity to bring the community together to have important conversations that lead to actions and collaboration and ultimately to change. I'm excited about our conversation today. It's on becoming the beloved community. What if Louisville became, embodied the vision of Dr. Martin Luther King as he described what would a beloved community look like and feel like. The conversation today is going to be open conversation. Essentially, we'll have conversation here on Zoom, and we will also be inviting those of you that are on Facebook to write a comment or participate in the conversation by writing in the comment box your answers to these questions, and we'll bring those into the conversation as we're able. So thanks for giving us a little time today, and I do want to give a little background to this conversation. There has been a group that has been working together and collaborating for about 10 years. We're a group that originally came together to help with develop the Compassionate Louisville Coordinating Circle, and we've stayed together and are trying to reimagine a compassionate city. And recently, last year, we did kind of almost a year-long process. We were trying to discern a new powerful question to organize ourselves, and coming out of that, we came up with the question: what if everyone in Louisville felt and expressed compassion that led to equity, kinship, and trust? And we really felt like this was Compassion 2.0 wanting to express itself. And so we're bringing you in at a real critical time where we're about to launch a new initiative, kind of called the Beloved Community Initiative or something like that. And I want to share a screen with you that describes kind of a model that we're using. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the model, but I do want to share it with you, because that will give us a little bit of background for the conversation that we're going to be having today. We are experimenting with trying to put together a model of social change based upon becoming the beloved community. And we're looking at what's called the constellation model, that would be self-organizing clusters of organizations and individuals that would be specifically addressing ideas, coming up with initiatives, programs related to becoming a beloved community. But we see the larger vision of being an equitable and just community. And the best way we can kind of host that, so to speak, is inviting people who share passion and ideas for a certain type of area of change. And so we're going to be experimenting with creating this model and moving ahead as a city to invite people into specific areas where they have ideas and passion to come together with other individuals and organizations and create a constellation. And so some of the work that we're going to be doing is supporting the cultivation of this initiative. And so this is a backdrop for our conversation today. Our conversation today is going to be looking at what would it look like if we became the beloved community. This will give us a little bit of more information for this, what is our shared vision, and cultivating some shared agreements. As this goes forward, we will be inviting and hosting conversations that will lead people into these different constellations. And constellations are kind of self-organizing, organic groups that collaborate with one another. And we're specifically trying to engage certain groups. So I wanted to share this just as a backdrop to the conversation today, and to let you know what we have conversation about today is going to be followed up on by helping us understand more fully what is the beloved community. So those of you that are participating on Facebook or here on Zoom, that is kind of the context for our conversation. I did want to open that up. Other folks that have been working with the group on this, Stephanie, Howard, Nikki, Al, do y'all have anything else that you would like to add as far as giving some context for the conversation that we're about to have, or anything that you would want to add that you think would be helpful? I would appreciate those thoughts if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of add anything that you think would be helpful. I can't imagine I explained it well enough that you all are sufficiently okay with that, but maybe you are. Howard, jump in there.
Who listens?
Who listens?
Yeah, this is an evolving journey. I don't think it has a starting point or doesn't have an ending point. None of us arrived at the beginning of a compassion journey, and none of us will be around whenever we finally reach a truly compassionate community, I believe. So we just have to realize that we're creating conditions for the compassionate community to emerge, to arrive.
Yeah, so welcome to a journey that we didn't begin and that we won't end. But it is a worthy journey. So thanks for giving your time and energy to it. So let's jump in. What we're going to do is we're going to ask 3 questions, or the first question is kind of an introductory question. And then we'll go around and give everybody a chance to share. Again, keep your comments within a couple of minutes because we do have 3 questions. And for those of you that are participating on Facebook, you're welcome to add your thoughts or questions to this conversation, and we'll bring them in as we are able. So the first question, let me share my screen again. The first question is pretty simple. It is, introduce yourself and share what brings you to this conversation. So we assume that the conversation had some interest to you. What brings you to this conversation? So let's jump in, and anybody can start. Or actually, to save time, why don't I go around the screen? So let's start with Howard, Stephanie, Nikki, Suzanne, Al, and Julie, and go in that order. So if you guys would introduce yourself and just share briefly what brings you to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Howard Mason. I've been a volunteer with Compassionate Louisville since it got started in 2011. And I'm committed. I mean, I'm all in on this, and I plan on staying committed. The idea of a beloved community kind of emerged for me over that period of time. I was working with a variety of groups, some of them faith-based, who, as they were evolving their visions on the community they wanted to become, they used the term beloved community, and they kind of helped me become more familiar and clearer and committed to the concept of a beloved community.
Great, thank you, Howard. Stephanie?
Hi there. I too have been a volunteer and mate of some of the people on this in this conversation since 2012. And I had the privilege beginning that year of co-hosting what was then Compassionate Louisville's Healthcare Constellation. I'm really passionate about how we can emerge as a beloved community, placing a lot of emphasis on understanding the trust and in our kinship, recognizing that those are vehicles to making sure that we've got the equity that we must have in order to proceed. I'm particularly passionate about addressing those social concerns that create disparities in our health and well-being, and very, very interested in what the next generation would like to see in terms of health and well-being for our community.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Al, would you go next? And then Suzanne?
I'm Al Klein. I help with Compassionate Louisville and Interfaith Paths to Peace. I work at Humana. And I just think we're at a very unique time in our life where we can't, we're starting to forget what it used to be like, and we still don't know what it's going to be like. And so we have no choice but to live in the now. And we now have this wonderful opportunity, I think, to just to make change where change previously was maybe not a possibility for many. And I think there's just going to be a real need for compassionate souls as we start to head more toward more and more suffering, just because of all of these, not only all of the changes and the disease, but there's just so many things going on that people need to know that they can go to a space and be heard.
Thanks, Al. Suzanne, would you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm new to any kind of participation in IPP. I'm a retired Episcopal priest. I became a priest late in life, shall we say, but had raised a family and loved Louisville as a community. We aren't born Louisvillians. We chose to be here, but I think Louisville has such a great potential. And I'm here because I am personally so deeply sad about the conditions of relationships and the present ways we're trying to meet challenges that haven't been there before. I feel more observer and a learner here, but I'm fully convinced that people, especially in some of the older generations, are relying on learning why they didn't know what's been going on for 400 years, especially in our racial issues. But I'm also hoping that there will be a way to connect with that greater power that is working with all of us and cares so deeply about each one of us being full members of the beloved community.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Suzanne, you were kind of the energy behind a program that I think we're going to be doing on Monday the 27th around grief and lament. So I think we're going to bring in interfaith folks to talk about doing grief and lament and how different religious traditions can help us in that process. So thank you for being the energy behind that. Nikki, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yep. Hi, I'm Nikki Thornton. I work with True Up, work with young people that have a foster care experience and the organizations that support our young people that have vulnerable experiences. And I joined Compassionate Louisville around 2014. So I've been a member since then and learned a lot, grown a lot. But it's been important in my work to be here today and throughout this journey because I think that for me, and I think for the people I work with, the young people and the staff I work with, you still gotta find hope, and you still want to be compassionate, and you teeter a little bit when things are happening, particularly in our city, around racial equity and such happen. And I think it can be easy to kind of go to the side of justice at all costs. But I think, it's important to remember the purpose and remember kind of a greater vision within our community and what we want for everyone in our community. And so I think for this group, for me, it's been a balance, but it's also been hope and reminder of a path I want to stay on, which is a compassionate path and not just an all out, kind of losing it militant path. And so it's been a good thermometer for me to stay positive and reminded that people want good for all people. And then I can go share that with the groups and young people I work with. So this work has been very, very, very important in my work with the community and others that I work with, and for me personally as well. Honestly, there's a lot going on, and I'm really angry and really upset. But at the same time, this group helps me to be fine with that, but also what are we going to do about it? So how do we move forward in a positive way for our Hope community? So I'm thankful. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Nikki. Julie, would you mind unmuting yourself and introducing yourself? Good to have you on the call.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, my name is Julie. Yeah, also new to involvement here. And I just think that this is a really good time to be re-envisioning what we can be as a community and how we can work for everyone and build that trust and compassion that's needed. And so I'm glad to be part of this conversation.
Great, Julie. Thank you for being here. I want to welcome those on Facebook, Bishop Lyons and Jim Hendricks Jr. We share the same last name, Jim, so that's exciting. Janet Robertson, Sarah Ramsey, Catherine Thornton, and Tom Vandergriff just joined us. So we want to welcome those of you that are joining us on Facebook Live. And if you want to put in the chat box, introducing yourself online, you're welcome to do that on Facebook as well. So there's a very simple process in these conversations. We've got 3 questions around the beloved community that we will just go around and each have a chance to answer. And we'll do it in a similar kind of way that we just did it there. And so the next question is, and what we like to do is ask a question and then give us a little time to sit with it in some silence. Often we ask the question and then immediately we go into answering it, which doesn't allow the question time to sink into us. And so we really want to sit with the question, give some silence, and then see what emerges in the silence. And then your sharing is really about what emerged for you in the silence. And we don't want to necessarily talk about respond to other people. We really want to be able to share what happened in the silence, because that's kind of the meat of what we call harvesting collective intelligence, and really wanting to see what wants to emerge. So here's the first question, and I'll ask it, give a few moments of silence, and then I invite you, if you're comfortable, maybe even to close your eyes and to allow a kind of movie to come up in your imagination around the beloved community. Here's the question. As Louisville becomes beloved community, what would we see, do, and feel? So sit for a moment with that and allow what you would see, what you see people doing, the feelings that are related to us being the beloved community. Almost like we're seeing a vision of the future emerge in the present. We are the beloved community, and as the beloved community, what would we see, do, and feel? So I'll give a few moments of silence and then we can answer that question. All right. So let's, we'll go in a similar order. For those of you that are joining us on Facebook, you're welcome to write a few words of response in the comment section, and those of us are on Zoom. Let's go in the same order for the sake of order. And so Howard, you mind starting?
Not at all. Could you let me have the screen for just a second? I'd like to share an image in a minute, please.
Sure.
I had a chance to think about these questions as I was crafting them. I probably crafted them with more haste than I would if I got a second chance to craft them. But the thing that I spent the most time thinking about when I put the questions together is, what's the verb? And I felt pretty comfortable with becoming. And I think that's the image that I experience the most strongly, is a community becoming. It's a process of emergence and transformation. And a lot of people will want to talk about, what are we becoming? And I'd like to share this image. This is from the King Center. You can see Dr. King in second from the left. He said, our goal is to create a beloved community, and this will require a qualitative change in our souls, as well as a quantitative change in our lives. And I'm hoping that's what we will see in our becoming. We'll see a change in our souls, and that relates directly to kinship and equity and trust and compassion. And we'll see a quantitative change in our lives, where we'll see more justice, more equity in investment, in education, in a variety of areas in our lives. Peace back to the center.
Thanks, Howard. I don't remember who was next. Was that Stephanie? Stephanie, you might go next.
Sure. So, Howard, thank you for that, because we do sit kind of with the tension of the being and the doing. And in my reflecting time, I just really envisioned our community having feeling safe enough and heard enough to open their hearts, to try to be more human-centered and compassionate in the way that we interact, to have this deep desire for everyone in our community, no matter what the color of their skin is, what their walk of life has been, that everybody has the potential to thrive, and that that we all recognize where the suffering exists and are willing to sacrifice maybe just a little ourselves so that others' suffering can end. And I think the thing that I really wish, we've been really good for the last 10 years using this word compassion and professing ourselves as a compassionate city, or a city that wants to listen to what Lady Compassion wants for our city. And I think that we've used the words, and many of us, I think, have walked the walk, but I don't know that we have been strong enough in our determination to hold ourselves and others accountable for really showing up with integrity around those actions and decisions that would validate that we truly are a compassionate city. So in a beloved community, our hearts would be opened, our integrity would be strong, we would not be afraid to come into the invitation and explore the accountability that we need to hold on to in order to live that value. So that's what came to me.
Thank you. Suzanne, would you mind sharing? Let's see, you're still muted there.
I was probably a little more specific in response to your request because I was very, very quiet, and I had images of open windows and open doors. And I'm not quite sure what that means. I'll need to think about it a little bit more, except that it means the doors to me, would have to do with welcoming, because you have to have someone come to a door, but you have someone that opens the door for other people. And windows, for me, bring in light and fresh air and things that help growth. So I'm much more esoteric and less specific about some of the how-tos, except I really do feel that we need to have that practicality. And I think Stephanie that's not the word she used, but accountability and trust to hear what is really accomplishing what you want, what you intend for it to accomplish, not just good words.
Thank you, Suzanne. Nikki, and then Al.
Yeah, I love that image as well, Howard. Thank you for that. I'd love to see unity, and I'd love for us to continue to stand together with one another, and I think we're seeing that a lot. And in terms of the feeling piece, I'd love for there to be more peace and more happiness and more contentment, which is where I think there's tension, certainly for me, and I think for others right now, is how to, now that we're seeing unity and we're seeing, each other stand up for one another, how do we continue to get to this place of peace and happiness and contentment and joy and all those kind of things within this journey, and not suffering and not hurt and those kind of things. So, but in terms of the beloved community, those are kind of my thoughts. All the images of goodness, and just really sitting with this feeling of wanting there to be the peace and happiness and contentment and joy.
Great, thank you. Al?
Yeah, I was just got off a call with some EAP people at Humana talking about compassion fatigue. And most are working at home now, and the number of calls they're getting and the severity of the calls centered around isolationism, and they were trying to coach us not only in terms of what the symptoms are, of compassion fatigue, but what are some of the solutions. And most of the solutions were, fairly organic. I mean, go out and garden or sing, or a lot of inner work. And then when the idea of creating community, for people to engage, to know you're not alone, and to know that there's something more than just the house you're trapped in and your immediate family. It was like they need to have some way of connecting, and now in this space we are limitless in terms of how and who we connect to, and so what we are becoming, I think, understanding how technology may play into that, and connect more people, and let people have the space to be listened to, I think is going to be really important, at least for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Al. I do want to bring in a comment that's on Facebook. Louisville is a sad city. No justice at all and no compassion. So, yeah, thank you. What came up for me was the feeling that this beloved community wouldn't have the absence of conflict, but that we would have ways of working through conflict so that everybody felt heard and understood, even though we wouldn't agree. So it was kind of interesting that it's not a utopian. It didn't feel utopian in the sense that, everything is just all worked out and all peachy. But it was a community that knew how to work through conflict in a way that brought us together rather than dividing us. And that we had ways that we knew how to do that. That there was this, knowing and these processes and platforms that allowed us to be beloved community, even in disagreement. So that's kind of what came up for me was that vision. So thank you again, those that are joining us on Facebook. We are asking each other questions about becoming the beloved community. And I want to go back to our second question now. And let's see, Howard, I may need you to give me, I don't know what I did there, but I'm not sure I can host disabled attendee screen share. Can you give me back hosting? I don't know what I did there, Howard. For some reason, it's not letting me share my screen. Still not.
I'm not holding it.
You're not holding it? Well.
I'll sign off and sign back in.
No,
Maybe
I don't
that'll
think
give it back to you.
For some reason, it's not saying that I'm the host.
Yeah, let me just, I'll sign off and that'll make you host again. And
Well, Howard, we know what the second question is. I can share the second question. So let me just share the second question. You don't have to log off. So the second question for our reflection is, what do we already have to help us in becoming the beloved community? So this is what we call an appreciative inquiry question. What do we already have to help us in becoming the beloved community? So spend a few moments in silence, just reflecting on what that question brings up for you. And then again, we'll have a chance to share. Those of you that are on Facebook, you're welcome to put in your answers in the chat box and we'll bring those into the conversation. What do we already have to help us in becoming the beloved community? Those of you joining us on Facebook, again, the question that we're sitting in silence with is, what do we already have in becoming the beloved community? All right, let's come back together, and I'm going to go in opposite order this time. So I guess that makes me first. I do want to read a comment that came up on Facebook from Sarah. A beloved community would be a place of no fear. People would reach full potential with the encouragement of their peers. Personal property would be the natural result of putting others first, not the ultimate goal. That's a beautiful statement, Sarah. Thank you for adding that. So again, those on Facebook Live, you're welcome to type in what do we already have in to become the beloved community. What came to me was I do feel like Louisville has these really deep spiritual resources. There is a level of spirituality in our community and really powerful. I mean, we have two seminaries, a Baptist seminary, a Presbyterian seminary. Gethsemane is close. There's this kind of new emerging spirituality. And I'm not just saying that as the Interfaith Paths to Peace person, but I really believe that there's a spiritual depth in our community that I think is a great resource for us in becoming the beloved community. So that's what came to me. So let's go backwards. And I think I don't know who that was. I'm completely lost now. Was it Nikki or Al? Al?
Oh, maybe now.
Al, let's go Al, Nikki, Suzanne, Stephanie, Howard.
Good question. I think sometimes when you've been doing this for a while, you tend to, it's easy to forget all of the connections and all of the things that we have done. And it's really not until somebody kind of visits Louisville and I get this sense that, you know, we're different, and when you're here it doesn't necessarily seem that different, and it's that perspective, I think. But from the get-go, you know, when the mayor made a bold statement to say, hey, we're going to be a compassionate city, and just took it upon himself to say, I mean, that had pretty far reach, and just the idea that word came up in day-to-day conversation or was part of a political platform, much less all of the work that was done for, you know, the Give a Day, and being winning some awards, and then also creating charters for compassion, people who signed the charter. Just the vocabulary and the vernacular of compassion is a really big thing, and I think we keep getting better at it, and it might not be in big aha moments, but I mean, it just seems like every time I turn around, there are people doing the work, and they're doing it with grace and humility, and not necessarily because somebody told them to do it, but because that's who we are. And I just think we're entering into this era of 2.0. It's like there's just a lot of spade work and a lot of hard work that has been down there just to have really great conversations, and to host things, and to be able to get at conversation around really tough questions, you know, all kind of wrapped up in this current situation that we're at right now. So I guess I can imagine a future where a lot of the labels and a lot of the problems that we've had to go to the next level can be fractured because of our current situation and being at home, but also this wonderful opportunity for us to be able to connect using technology.
Thanks, Al. We'll go Nikki and then Suzanne. Nikki, before you share, I want to bring in Colin, who's on Facebook, said, we have diversity, strength, oneness, powerful, and tender. I like that, Colin. Thank you for holding those two words, powerful and tender, together. Nikki?
I think that our city is, resource rich for our beloved community in a lot of ways. I'm experiencing and seeing a lot of compassion that's being shown for COVID and for the racial unrest. I'm seeing a lot of unity. I feel unity. I think I'm seeing that others care about their neighbors, putting out the green lights or the greenery, in their neighborhoods, in their homes. Statements that are being made, by people not even from Louisville, but they're coming here from other places to support Louisville in these efforts around the racial unrest. I see individuals, organizations, churches who are not only speaking out, about unity with COVID and racial unrest, but also action, doing things, whether it be donations or money or, collaborative efforts toward education, pursuits. So I see that happening. And I also see, people holding those in power accountable, or at least trying their best to hold them accountable, that we would have justice and equity in our city and in our state. So I think we have a lot of, I think we're seeing a lot of tools and resources we already have, for this beloved community. It's just, continuing to push forward to get there.
Thanks, Nikki. Suzanne, do you mind unmuting and sharing?
I don't mean to be self-serving, but the first thing that came to me was the Interfaith Paths to Peace. And I think that over the years, and I've lived here for well over 50 years now, and watched how Interfaith Paths to Peace, through some of their programs and traditions, have nurtured this whole idea, being very inclusive, and it's an opportunity to grow in every way. But the other thing that I think we have here is our arts community. And the arts community, at this point, I see it as not only this magnificent ballet and actors and music, the whole 9 yards, but each one has transformed itself into not this hard driving, competitive. It's still competitive, but it is collaborative and caring. And then within each one of those arts forms, they bring the other art. They're not competing with other art forms, and that extends the speed and so many of those things. So that it was extremely moving to me how quietly one evening Teddy brought the orchestra down to the courthouse. No fanfare, and to me he is a genuine star, because he doesn't act like a star in many of the definitions of that. But and they truly have this ability to share a very deep and passionate way of seeing and bringing beauty into your life, even in some of the worst times.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Suzanne. Stephanie, and also those that are joining us on Facebook were sharing the question, what do we already have to help us in becoming the beloved community? So it's kind of an appreciative inquiry question. What do we already have? Stephanie, and then Howard.
So I've been so privileged to be kind of on this journey for almost 10 years now. And I always have thought about the Compassionate Louisville initiative as kind of the folks that are amending the soil in a garden, kind of getting it ready for some deep planting, maybe some bulbs that'll take some time to start to sprout. But we've got a lot of bulbs and seeds that are planted, and we've got a lot of soil that's been amended. It's not all perfect right now, but it's in good shape and ripe for the flourishing. We've got to clear out some of the weeds, and we've got to water this garden, and that's not always sexy, and it doesn't always grab headlines, but that's some of the work. But I think that we're very well suited for that. We've got thousands of people that have engaged in our Compassionate City initiative, either through the Mayor's Week of Giving, but really kind of the expansiveness of our constellation work, our town halls, and those individuals and organizations that have committed to charters of compassion, as Al had mentioned. Since then, though, we've got people, and it's largely led by our youth, the next generation, that is being really loud, really clear, really organized, and really brilliant in the way that they are holding us accountable to live out these words with integrity. And I am so inspired by the creativity, just the brilliance, the dedication of our next generation. Overlay that in a community that already has really rich resources in restorative practices, restorative justice, and peace and reconciliation work. We've got so many tools in the toolkit to really make this, make the hard edges a little bit softer. And I think that if we're honest with ourselves, we love this city. You don't see people leaving town because things are hard right now. We love this city. And so I think that we can cultivate and leverage this love to really, help us realize this, this vision of a beloved community. We've got to listen more. And so I'm excited about the containers, Judd, that you're creating at IPP, and the containers that are created, through our experiences with Compassion in Louisville, that allow conversations and deep listening to take place. So I feel like those are all just great advantages for us to realize this vision.
Thanks, Stephanie. Howard?
I think I see a foundation, a framework of commitment to our becoming, strongly emerging in the community. To go back to that MLK quote from a few minutes ago, I think most of the discussion outside of Compassionate Louisville has been about the quantitative changes in our lives, about the programs, the resources, the initiatives, the policies. And so right now I see a much stronger commitment to making those changes happen. But I see with that commitment a sense of the qualitative change in soul beginning to happen with it. I'm sensing that the yearning for a beloved community is held more strongly and more broadly than I've seen it held before. I'm seeing what Al commented on earlier, that we aren't who we used to be and we can't go back. All we can do is go forward, and that we have an opportunity to make that next thing better than the last thing. And also a sense that we can't help just some of us, we can only help all of us. The only solutions that will work are the ones that are completely inclusive, that are really for all of us. And I think that we're growing the critical yeast that will lead to the transformation we're yearning for.
Thank you, Howard. So this is our final question. Again, those that are joining us on Facebook, we're kind of just sharing the reflections on 3 questions around beloved community. And this is our final question, so I'll read it. I'll also put it in the chat box on Facebook, so we'll have it. What are the most important questions to ask and answer in becoming the beloved community? What are the most important questions to ask and answer in becoming the beloved community? And last time, what are the most important questions to ask and answer in becoming the beloved community? And I'll give about 30 seconds or so to just sit and see what emerges for you in that question. All right, so let's go back in the same order that we started. So Howard, if you go first. And again, the question that we're reflecting on is, what are the most important questions to ask and answer in becoming the beloved community?
Yes, 2 things come up for me. One is, are we willing to work, or how can we work at multiple levels, at the personal, relational, institutional, systemic, and cultural? You know, it seems to me that it takes all of those levels. I'm trying to name 4: individual, relational, relationships, and then systems, and then cultural. So are we willing to take on all of that at once, which is what I think it takes? And are we willing to do the learning up front, so that we're not simply downloading stuff that didn't get us there in the past? My experience has been what one philosopher said: many people would rather die than think, and often do. And I think that it's a challenge. I think we're willing to commit our energy to doing whatever comes to mind, which is often what we've done before. And if we want new results, we can't do what we've done before.
Thank you, Howard. Stephanie, before you go, I'd like to bring in some comments from Facebook. I would ask, who currently doesn't have a seat at the table or opportunities to make sure their voices are heard? Yeah, thank you, Stephen. That's a great question. And then Sarah asks, what are the resources? What are the needs? And how do we connect needs and resources? And that's a great question. Thank you, Sarah. And then a follow-up comment from Stephen. For instance, when we have conversations about diversity and equity, we as a society rarely include disability in these conversations. Oh, thank you, Stephen. Right, that's there are a lot of groups that are left out of that when we talk about that. Thank you, Stephen, for bringing in that awareness in the conversation. So, Stephanie?
Yep, I just came up with 3 questions, and I think that the first one is what really gives us hope when we imagine a beloved community? What really gives us hope? What makes our hearts sing when we imagine that? And then kind of the converse of that, what are we afraid of? I mean, if we pursue this image of a beloved community, where's our fear? And what are those scary places, you know, that might keep us from moving forward? And then really the strong question is, what are we willing to do now? Which might include some sacrifice, but what are we willing to do now to become that beloved community?
Thank you, Stephanie. Suzanne, and then Al, and then Nikki. Is Nikki still with us?
She had to hop off to another meeting.
Oh,
so,
that's
yeah.
what she said, yeah. So Suzanne and then Al. Suzanne, you're still muted there.
I'm getting hang. How do you get the message of inclusiveness out to truly include everyone? It's wonderful to have conversations with people who are inspired and working on this, but the message needs to get out to everyone. And of course, I'm thinking of some of those people, Al, that are feeling so isolated and who I'm fully convinced that many people are so confused, afraid, baffled by what's really going on. And where do I fit in all this? And so I wonder if too often they get kind of left out there, like kind of what gets pushed to the side and everything. And then the second is, where do we find the help to nurture and encourage bringing everyone to the table? And how do you deal with the question of some people don't want everybody at the table?
Yeah. Thank you. Is that it, Suzanne? Did you have another?
Well, the one other thing
Sure.
that is always bothering me is this whole, where does politics, how does grabs for power, and where is politics going to be involved? Can it be involved in a positive way? Is it going to always be something that we need to fear, or at least, if not fear, name and deal with?
Yeah, thank you. Al?
Yeah, 2 things come to mind. The first one that caught me is how do I get lost in service? How can I serve better? Something like that. The other one is, how can we host better conversations? How do we find those right questions that just draw people in to have conversations so that they can use their gifts to serve?
Thank you, Al. So the questions that emerged for me in thinking about what are the questions that we need to ask and answer in becoming the beloved community, mine were what's the fulcrum points and what's the tipping point? I don't know that everybody needs to get on board. I think a percentage of people do, and then when that happens, look out. So, so I'm interested in fulcrum points. Howard, what was the image you used? If you give me a fulcrum point and a place to stand and a lever long enough,
Yeah,
you
if you
can.
give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum and a place to stand, I can move the world. It's Archimedes.
Yeah, right. So I think those are some of my questions. Where are we standing? What's the fulcrum point? And what's the lever? So those are kind of around systems questions of like, what are the tools we need there? I'm gonna there's also another question from Stephen. How do we invite people to serve? It's not about begging, it's about invitation. That's a nice, about invitation. Thank you, Stephen. So this is one of the things that came up for me, and I'm just going to read it because we read it this morning in our Lectio Divina. It's a poem that I just want to read kind of as we begin to close, and then we'll have a kind of a final round of what's emerged. But I want to read this poem. I did put it in the Facebook there on the chat if those of you that are on Facebook want to open it up. We are the ones we have been waiting for, by Hopi elders. You have been telling people that it's the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. And there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for your leader. Then he clasped his hands together and smiled and said, "This could be a good time. This is a river. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off in the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So to close our time together, let's just do a checkout. And a checkout is just an opportunity in a few words, sentences to share what's been meaningful about our conversation. And again, for those of you that have been joining us on Facebook, we asked 3 simple questions around the beloved community. This information and the conversation will be used to help create an initiative that we're really excited about that will be beginning to launch this fall around the beloved community in a way in which we think we might move in that direction through using a constellation model to address some of the systemic issues in our community. So thank you for your participation, and we'll allow a time for a checkout. And any of you that are joining are welcome to add a phrase or a sentence in the comment box on Facebook, and those that are with us on Zoom, let's let's go in reverse order. So that means I'll start with the checkout. I kind of already had mine with the poem. I was like, drop the bomb with the poem, bam. That's really all I've got to say. Other than I am deeply grateful. The phrase in this poem that came to me is, what is your garden? And I think that's a really great question for me right now. Is I can get lost in the many things, but I need to be really clear about what my garden is. So let's go Howard, then Stephanie, Suzanne, and then Al. And then those on Facebook, please add your comments. Howard?
Much gratitude. I feel really like I've received a gift every time I participate in one of these, that there's so much more than what I think. And it's so great to hear others' thoughts and feelings and energies. And I feel like we approach wholeness through that path. Thank you.
Is it me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks, Stephanie.
No, it's okay. So I love the poem, Judd, and just I use this image of a garden when I was revealing what we have to lead us to this beloved community. And I love this garden. I love the people that come to tend this garden. I love the people that come to look at the garden. I love the weeds that are sprouting up in the garden that make us much more aware. So, and I love sitting in this garden of imagining this beloved community with my mates. And I have deep gratitude for every one of you and everyone that has been part of this journey. Hope that I can, constantly work on the things in myself that allow me to show up in the garden authentically and with the spirit of abundance.
Thanks, Stephanie. Suzanne?
Well, I'm very grateful I feel I'm listening so very much, and there's a lot of deep listening to be done, but also that has been gifts that have been given. And I'm trying to, at one point I've said, reimagine myself. And at this point in my life, at this point in the world, everything so dramatically and instantly has just happened, and putting the pieces back together or building a little bit different boat to be driving or riding in on that river. So it's just been I'm grateful for it, and I feel blessed that I have had the ability to be here and figure out how to unmute myself and be with the community online.
We're very thankful that you've learned how to unmute yourself, Suzanne. You've always had such good things to say in our calls. Thanks for being a mate in the journey. Al?
I've got deep feelings and connections to the movie Field of Dreams. And if you don't know the plot, Kevin Costner goes crazy just following what's being told for him to do. And he gathers all these folks together for doing what he thought was the right thing to do all along, and he was following in his heart. And then at the very, very end, there's his dad, and he gets to play catch with him. And he makes the comment, "So it was all for you." And Ray Liotta was leaving the field, and he said, "No, it was always you, Ray." And I get caught in service, and I just realize I'm the one that's so much better because of all this stuff, and I'm doing all of this stuff selfishly. I mean, I'd like to say it's just, wow, give your time and so forth. But every time we get together and every time we do this, I see something different. I feel something different. I grow, and I love that space of growing within service.
Thank you, Al. We had a conversation on Wednesday. It kind of started in the morning, but this keeping our hearts open and the emotion that people have been sharing online, the last couple of days has just been really rich. It just feels like something's happening with us being vulnerable and having courage to share our hearts and our emotions with each other. So yeah, I'm just really grateful for that. To echo some things that have been said on Facebook, just reiterating what Al said. Colleen said, honored to walk paths with all in love, strength, and being focused. And Stephen's words, I'm glad that I stumbled upon this, a happy accident. Thanks, Stephen. You've had some really great comments on Facebook, and right, happy accident or synchronicity, I guess, however we claim that. But Stephen, thanks for being on Facebook and adding your comments. So thank you all again so much. And again, there's this really growing, beautiful community. I can promise you, if you're ever around at 3 o'clock, you can get on the IPP Zoom call, and there's going to be something really cool happening. Also at 9 o'clock in the morning, we do devotionals from different traditions, and encourage you to join us at 9 and 3 o'clock every day for continuing the community of practice of becoming the beloved community. So thanks everybody for your time and energy. And tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we've got an Enneagram conversation on Enneagram and archetypes, which I think will be a really interesting conversation. I hope you'll come back and join us at 3. Stephanie, Al, Suzanne, Howard, Nikki, who was with us, and Jane, who was with us a little bit, thank you for being on Zoom. And we'll take all this good work and move it forward. Thank you all. You're welcome to unmute and check out. Thanks.